From a financial market perspective, AI is the hottest topic on Wall Street right now, driving enormous investment and excitement. So, from a Schumpeterian perspective, do you see artificial intelligence as a true engine for long-term growth, or is still in transitional phase?
Well, I think from a Schumpeterian perspective, it's it's interesting that so much of the leadership in this movement is coming from quite new firms. It's true that Alphabet and Meta, other established firms are spending themselves billions of dollars on it, and they're definitely in the race. Uh, but I think it's great that in the United States there's a flexible enough financial system that these almost brand new companies can like OpenAI can come up and challenge the established incumbents with all of their incumbency advantages. You know, we know from our work on competition and innovation that a really competitive environment that is wealth in which outside competitors are well financed, not it not only gives you the possibility of new upstarts replacing incumbents, but it also makes the incumbents themselves more productive. It forces them to be more productive to stay ahead of the competition. And so I think we're seeing tremendous productivity gains as a result of this. But of course, we're right now in a shakeout period. It's very clear. I don't think there's going to be room for as many large language models as are being developed right now. And I really, of course, they're going to be specialized autonomous agents that are spun off of these things and so on. But uh, it's clear that we're in a period much like the dot-com boom, like the railroad boom 200 years ago in England, like so many other booms that have a fundamental technological basis. There's a real reason for people to be making all these investments. There are some fundamentals out there, but an awful lot of those investments are not going to pay off. Uh, the ones that do pay off are going to pay off tremendously, and it's all very exciting. But it's also a little, I'm sure, a little scary for a lot of people.
Since many people compare today's AI boom to the dot-com era, do you think it's at the beginning of a bubble, entering bubble territory, or approaching a point where it may burst?
Well, I honestly don't know. I mean, bubbles aren't something that anybody can predict. If they could, they would break the bubble right away if they could be financed well enough. And uh, but I know that we're in a situation which is typical of bubbles. There is a fundamental basis for it all. People are people are going very much into debt. We're starting to worry about how these large companies that are investing in AI are engaged in various kinds of circular financing and so on. And uh, it's pretty clear that a lot of people who are still investing very heavily, even themselves think that there is a bubble here that's going to burst, but they feel confident that they can get out in time. Uh, and of course, not everybody can get out in time. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But just the fact that people that I might call it a bubble doesn't mean that there's nothing fundamental there. There's something very big that's fundamental there. It's just that it gets uh, we're in the shakeout period. It was going to really pay off magnificently, but not all of them will.
With the economy being shaped by rapid technological change, what skills or capacities matter most for sustaining productivity growth over time, both for individuals and for companies in the artificial intelligence era?
I think adaptability is going to have a premium for quite a while now because we're going to be in a period where the economic landscape is changing very quickly. And this was true during the IT revolution. It's going to be true during the AI revolution, that people are going to be changing jobs and occupations, I think, a lot more frequently than they did, 50 or 100 years ago. And adaptability is going to be very important. And I think that our educational systems around the world are going to have to be refocused to concentrate to some extent on adaptability, on learning to learn. Artificial intelligence, of course, is going to complicate the whole educational system, because there's a big temptation to use artificial intelligence to replace thinking. But that's not a recipe for productivity growth. We have to somehow or other design educational systems so that students can learn to use artificial intelligence, but they also learn to learn on their own. And that's going to be a bit of a challenge. I also feel that we're continuing to move more and more into a service economy globally, even though there are many countries like China that are still huge manufacturing powers. Manufacturing is becoming so productive that it's requiring less and less labor to produce more and more output. And what kind of services are we going to be using? Well, we've also got a demographic challenge globally. I mean, population growth is slowing down. The average age of the population is growing. People are living longer. And I think that, healthcare services and just old age services are going to be a huge sector in the future. And I think that the educational system has to train people with more people skills. Mm-hmm. Skills of empathy, skills of teamwork, skills of leadership, and so on. And that's going to help them move into some of the new services that are going to have to be introduced in order to take advantage of artificial intelligence and provide everybody with meaningful work. So there's a big challenge in facing educational systems around the world, I think.
Turning to China and other emerging economies, many have relied on manufacturing for decades, but now are transitioning toward innovation-led growth. So based on your research, what conditions are most critical for that transition to succeed?
I think that certainly one of them is what I've already mentioned, that we're going to have to gear educational systems to fostering creativity. Mm-hmm. A lot of countries, the focus in education has been on getting people who will learn skills, learn facts, be able to come up with those facts very quickly and so on, but not necessarily to be creative. And I think the American educational system has been very good in that respect, although it doesn't do well in international tests. Nevertheless, the students that come out of the best American universities tend to be extremely creative and very productive. And I think that there's going to be a premium on that in countries like China that have reached the global technology frontier and need to start pushing that frontier ahead themselves, which of course China has already started to do in electric vehicles and many other sectors. But I think that's one of the most important things. Another thing, of course, is that it's going to require, for a lot of countries, it's going to require a very flexible financial system that doesn't just invest in established companies, but is willing to take risks and take a venture capital role, and often with a long run point of view, because A lot of upstarts fail several times before they finally come up with something really productive. And I think it's also going to require strong competition laws. There are a lot of countries that have reached that middle income level where they're up to the frontier, but they're dominated by large, powerful corporations that have political influence and so on. And that's not where the new productivity gains are going to come from. These countries might be productive, their productivity may grow, but all of the evidence suggests that the really big breakthrough innovations tend to come about from newer, smaller firms, and that's going to have to be promoted actively with competition policy.
That's a very interesting point. Based on my previous experience, I had always assumed that most technological breakthroughs originated from large tech giants rather than smaller firms.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been a lot of very interesting work done by some of it by Ufuk Sigit at the University of Chicago and his colleagues, looking at the social characteristics and life cycle patterns of inventors, people who acquire patents, international patents, U.S. patents. And it turns out that there are a number of characteristics about them. They tend to be not so much young as middle-aged. They tend to be people that have had early life exposure to creative industries or creative processes, or have parents who themselves were creative. They also tend to work for young, small firms. Not entirely, but if you take a look at the importance, the impact by citations, for example, of patents that are generated by them working for small companies, they tend on average to be more important innovations than those done by people with similar characteristics at much larger corporations.
Finally, looking ahead, are you more optimistic or more cautious about global growth and productivity over the next decade? And what developments would most influence your outlook?
Well, I tend to be optimistic because I see so much potential in artificial intelligence. I see so much going on in the energy sector with new possibilities. It's now I feel much more comfortable about the fate of the planet because clean energy has advanced to such an extent that it's almost become, I think, self-sustaining and doesn't really require that much more encouragement by governments because it's just economical now to start producing power with clean energy sources than it is by burning fossil fuels. There's still a lot of opposition from the status quo to introducing clean energy, but I think that's a really optimistic. That's a good basis for my optimism, and I do think that in every time a new general purpose technology has come around in the past, people have thought that, oh, this is the end of labor income. People are going to be unemployed in mass numbers, and it hasn't happened yet. Every time, it turns out that new developments take place down the road. And of course, in the long run, everybody wins from the new technologies. I mean, it's hard to imagine anybody nowadays who would be better off if only the power loom hadn't been invented back in the 19th century. But at the time when it was invented, it destroyed the livelihoods of all sorts of highly skilled craftspeople. But nobody would go into those jobs now. People have found the new ones. And I'm sure that's going to be the case with artificial intelligence. It's just a question of how fast we're able to come up with the productivity enhancing side that will take care of people who might be displaced by it. But in the past, worries about technological unemployment have been overblown, and I tend to go with history, even though we don't have a large number of examples to count on. We're dealing with a small sample, but I think that's the best guess, and so I'm optimistic.